Welcome students. So today our topic is mechanism of hormone action. So now what is hormone? So in the definition we can see hormones are chemical messenger produced by endocrine glands in the body that are released into the bloodstream and travel to specific target organs or tissues to regulate their functions. So basically hormones are some chemicals that are produced and secreted from the endocrine glands, and these are released into the bloodstream directly. So through the bloods these hormones reaches the target organs and tissues where they do their functions. Hormones control and coordinate many important processes in the body such as growth, metabolism, reproduction, mood, emotion, etc. So today our main motto is to see how hormones do their function in the target organs. So as we can see, hormones produces their effects on target tissue by binding to specific proteins called hormone receptors located in the target tissue only. There are two types of hormone receptors. One is membrane bound receptor and the other one is intracellular receptor. The membrane bound receptor is present on the cell membrane of the target cell, and the intracellular receptor present inside the target cell. Mostly these are the nuclear receptors present in the nucleus. Each receptor is specific to one hormone. It means only a particular type of hormone can bind with that receptor only. Now, binding of hormone to its receptor leads to formation of hormone receptor complex. Now we will see what is the hormone receptor complex. As we can see in the photo, we have drawn a hormone with the blue color, and here we have drawn the cell membrane, and green color there is a receptor. Now the hormone comes and binds with the receptor, which leads to form hormone receptor complex. So the green and blue together called the hormone receptor complex. Now if we take a overview of the mechanism of hormone action, so it will be like that. At first hormone, it will bind with the receptor and it will lead to formation of hormone receptor complex, which will do certain biochemical changes in the target tissue, and it will cause the physiological response. The mechanism of action of the hormones depends mainly on whether the hormone is water soluble or lipid soluble. Now if we see the water soluble hormones, there are some examples like peptide hormones, protein hormones, catecholamines, which are the adrenaline. These hormones cannot cross the cell membrane. So what is the mechanism for these hormones? So this hormone bind to the receptor on the cell membrane. Receptor activates a second messenger system. The second messenger produce cellular response. There are some common second messengers like cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP, IP3DAG, calcium 2 plus, etc. Here in the picture we can see a water soluble hormone which cannot cross the lipid bilayer of the cell membrane, so it comes and bind with the receptor. It leads to formation of hormone receptor complex. This binding activates the G protein, which in turn activates the adenylyl cyclase. Now the adenylyl cyclase catalyzes the conversion of ATP to CAMP. Here the CAMP is the secondary messenger. Now the CAMP activates the protein kinase which in turn phosphorylates the inactive protein present in the cell. Now the protein gets activated and the activated proteins alter the cell activity. Now let's see lipid soluble hormones. Some examples are there like steroid hormones, which are the cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, etc., and the thyroid hormones. As these hormones are lipid soluble, these can cross the plasma membrane easily. So in case of these hormones, the action will be like this. Hormone enters the cell and binds to the intracellular receptor, which can be cytoplasmic receptor or nuclear receptor. Now hormone receptor complex binds with the DNA and alters gene transcription, which leads to formation of new proteins and the physiological response occurs. Here in the picture, there is a lipid soluble hormone which directly enters into the cell by piercing the cell membrane. And inside the cell there is the receptor. The hormones binds with the receptor and forms the hormone receptor complex. Now the hormone receptor complex enters inside the nucleus and binds with the DNA and triggers the transcription process. Now the mRNA is transcribed. You can see the mRNA which is transcribed from the DNA and it translates into proteins which alter the cell activity. Here are some photos that are taken from the NCERT. Here you can see hormones that interact with the membrane bound receptors. It means these are the hormones which are water soluble, which cannot cross the lipid bilayer of the cell membrane. This photo is of those hormones which interact with intracellular receptors. It means these hormones are lipid soluble hormones which directly enters into the cell. Now we will compare between water soluble hormones and lipid soluble hormones. So in solubility, water soluble hormone dissolve in water, lipid soluble hormone dissolve in lipids. Examples are, in case of water soluble hormones, peptide hormones, protein hormones, catecholamines, etc. And in lipid soluble hormones, steroid hormones, thyroid hormones, etc. Ability to cross cell membrane. Water soluble hormones cannot easily cross the lipid bilayer, and lipid soluble hormones easily diffuse through cell membrane. Receptor location. In water soluble hormones, the receptors are present on the cell surface membrane, and in lipid soluble, inside the cell the receptors are present, maybe the cytoplasm or the nucleus. Mechanism of action. Water soluble hormone bind to membrane receptors and activate second messenger system. Lipid soluble hormones bind to intracellular receptor and directly affect gene expression. Here the secondary messengers are not needed. Second messenger's involvement usually present and usually absent. There are some secondary messengers like CAMP, IP3, DAG, calcium 2 plus. Speed of action, rapid, slower. Water soluble hormones acts rapidly, and the lipid soluble hormones action is little bit slower. Duration of effect. Water soluble hormones are short lived. The effect is short lived, and lipid soluble hormones effect is long lasting. Main cellular effect. Alters activity of existing enzyme and proteins, and lipid soluble hormones stimulate synthesis of new proteins. Transport in blood. Water-soluble hormone usually circulate freely in plasma, and in case of lipid-soluble hormone, these usually bound to carrier proteins. So this is all for today. The next day we will come up with another interesting topic of biology.